Nice boots.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District at 5:03 p.m. Machine is open for roll call. All right. And President Lapine, can you please lead us in the prayer?
To acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom. And we pray for our world leaders to know how to attain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do which is right. Amen.
After me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving down the agenda, any executive sessions?
There is no executive session. Status report by the Executive Port Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows as my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 28 February through 11 March 2020. During this time frame, we met with the Dallas County Commission at their board meeting, and the agreement to enter into an MOU with the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and the Dallas County Inland Port was approved. This is a major 2020 goal of the PPHTD, that being to be the go-to port to provide logistics support to the third largest metropolis in the United States. The Dallas County Inland Port, when fully matured, will be a 90,000-acre industrial site. I participated in a Hyperrail visioning workshop with members of Virgin Hyperrail. This concept is very cutting edge and will be the initiating technology in containers loaded at the port and moved to a location where they will be moved forward by a Class 1 rail. I also met with principals of the New Orleans Gulf Coast and an interested party in the funding of the rail bypass project around the Naval Air Station. We took them on a driving tour of the route, and it was agreed upon we will gather again in early April. These talks will be ongoing. Just this morning, the Supplemental Pay Board approved the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District as an entity to receive supplemental pay for our firefighters. I'd like to thank Donald Durr and Paul Matthews for their hard work in getting our qualified firefighters an additional $500 a month. After it has been approved, then the firefighters just merely have to go up to the board and show their credentials, and they will be receiving that supplemental pay. So, good job, Donald. Good job, Paul. On a personal note, I'm the proud dad that got to enlist his daughter in a ceremony about 30 minutes ago. I got to induct her into the Army, and all I can say is, God bless the Army. Lastly, I have invited John Helmers with the Parish Plaquemines government, Daryl Broussard with the United States Army Corps of Engineers, Brent Dewey with Coastal Restoration to provide a Bud Mat update to our board and to our guest here today. John?
You got it. All right. Are we on? Okay. As you know, we've been working on the Tiger Pass project, and we were tying it to BudMat. Some changes have occurred, and we've been trying to match those two services up. Unfortunately, we missed the round, and I'm not going to go in depth into it. I'm going to defer to Darrell from the Corps and let him explain the nuts and bolts to that. But we did select the site. The site's been all approved. Everything's been done and approved. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, folks, for inviting us to present today. What's being passed out now is a little handout. I want to leave you guys with something from the project. We were about 80% complete with the job and selecting a site. We were hoping to get in the president's budget or in the work plan for construction dollars sort of to marry up with the O&M dollars, and we did not make the president's budget or the work plan. So the BudMat project at this point, we're just going to complete the design effort and put it on the shelf and wait for another round of funding to come in for another project. The dredging of Tiger Pass will continue this year. They intend to open bids again in April of this year. They intend to, with that bid opening, try to achieve a channel depth of about 12 feet. If you recall, last time they opened bids, we did get some bidders, but the bids were so much higher than the government estimate that they were unawardable, so we could not go forward with it. However, they're going to try to do it again in April and open bids. With the referring to the BudMat project, if you was to turn to the second sheet, the project, as I said, we managed to get 80% through the project decision document. We've spent about $300,000 of the $1.6 million that we signed an agreement for. So the team really moved very quickly and efficiently, and I contribute that to the teams working together in the past. We've selected a site. The site that we selected is, if you look towards the left in yellow, the site TP10 is the site that we have selected. We evaluated probably in the neighborhood of 12 or so various different sites and locations. And if you turn the next page over, you can see some of the criteria and analysis that we actually used in a selection. Cost came into a factor of it. The site TP10, we were going to create 226 acres of marsh by taking the dredge material from the dredging and placing it at this location. And we had these habitat units that we contribute a value to. The cost of that project that we've selected is about $9.5 million. So should we get construction funding, it will require us to sign a project partnership agreement, and the port would be responsible for 25% of that, which is about $2.3 million. So we would be able to construct 226 acres of marsh, and the port's portion of that would be $2.3 million. And what I just left you with was a path forward of all the items that we'd have. So we don't want to stop where we are. We're 80% through. We will have a NEPA document in about the next 60 days. We'll have a full NEPA clearance of the project. And these are just some of the tasks that we would round out and complete, put the project on the shelf, and then wait for funding.
Questions from the
Any
panel?
questions? Yeah.
Y'all are going to dredge anyway, right?
Yes.
And that's from number 1 outside in the Gulf to number 7, or
Well, we dredge from mile 14 to 7.
in the Gulf?
Well,
Out the rocks and all, or?
I don't think we go out that far. I think if you look at the map here,
Yeah.
you'll see the dashed line. So if you can gauge, I'm not used to calling it 0. We call it mile 7 to 14. So if you look at the map, that's the location that we'll dredge.
The way the markers are, number 1's on the outside.
Okay.
Comes in. So that's what I'm confused about, so.
Okay.
And
I'm not used to calling it 1. So that's why I wanted to bring a map to actually give you a visual picture of it.
I know 1 to 14 needs to be dredged, and if you was going 7 to 14, that didn't need to be dredged.
Please come up to the microphone.
The areas to
Brent, state your name and address, please.
Brent Dewey, Coastal Engineering Solutions, 1664 Chevelle Drive, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Those areas to dredge come from survey. So they survey that area, and those are the areas that aren't at the federal standard that need to be dredged. So the areas that are identified and slated to be dredged are the areas from survey, that survey showing from the authorized channel need to be dredged.
All right. So even
Did that
without,
answer your question?
yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Commissioner Russo.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. When we first approved this, you know, my concern was that we would wind up with a set of plans on the shelf, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So I'd like to know where the port anticipates getting the $2.9 million if we ever get the federal money to be able to match this. And, you know, the plans and whatever we've done, we've already spent the $150,000 or $175,000?
I'm sorry, the feds, we've spent about 330, and on the non-fed side, you guys are less than that. You guys are about 25% of that.
So how much is that? Did we spend? So we spent the 150 that we put up?
No, less than.
Less than that, yeah, about half of that.
How much?
149 now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
About how much?
We spent less than we spent less than 150. It's around 140. Actually, last week, that was an introduction I requested for the chairman to present. But now that we've had this update, last week I asked him to withdraw that introduction to move forward with more funding on the project on the port side. We put it in at 150 initially so that we could come back to the board and provide an update. That was the whole purpose for it. So where we see where we are right now, obviously we're putting it on the shelf, so we're not moving forward in that area. John, you want to?
Yeah, as far as the additional funding on the construction end, I've been in meetings with Chairman Klein of CPRA. They are actually reviewing this project now. I haven't gotten the word back from them yet, but they're very interested because the cost of them building wetlands at this price is a 2-for-1 bargain for them. But it does fit in with the master plan. It does provide protection to the ports of Venice. It helps protect the plants down there. So as these different projects come up, we evaluate them to make sure that they modeled into the master plan to have CPRA participate in them and pick up the construction costs, along with some private entities that are interested.
And have we made any progress with the private entities that you said we're going to put up match?
They are very interested. They haven't signed anything yet because obviously they haven't gotten to that point. And they're real interested in our parish, and they want to help with the promotion of the wetlands and the protection.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bartholomew.
Yes, I was looking at the map between 7.5 to 10 miles down. We are using, going through land that's already been built, just taking that away, some of it, right?
No, this is the channel, so we're only going to dredge the channel and put the
What
channel.
that brown or pink looking color is there? What that just represent?
That represents the dimensions of where the channel flows.
No. The brown or all the different colors, that's not land?
That's mud flats and land where.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So
all that will be done.
why are we going through that, taking that away when that land was already
No,
built up?
There's a channel that goes through it.
But look why the line passes is identified as cutting it. That's all I'm just saying. If it's not so, it's not so.
Right. So under the current O&M plan, they dispose of the material side cast directly adjacent to the channel. And what you're seeing there is probably land that's built up from the dredging, and we side cast it over. They're going to do the same thing this year.
But they're going to take that land that's had built up and put it a little further over on the property?
No, the land that's there stays. All we're going to do is create the channel, put the channel back.
The channel's not 100% filled in. It's still a waterway. It's just a very shallow waterway. It's not real legible on the map to see it like that.
So that's waterway where the
Yes, sir.
line is.
Yes, sir.
That's the channel.
The dots, the red and white
Yeah,
dots,
that's
the
the channel. So that land is just on the opposite side. That okay.
Yes, sir.
So you want to widen that channel.
We're going to deepen it. It's going to be 100-foot wide.
Yes.
Yeah, 100-foot wide. The channel will be 100.
And it's not 100 feet now, right?
No.
That's what I'm saying. You're gonna widen it. Yeah.
You're going to widen
Okay.
it and
And
bring
deep-
it down to
and
12
And
feet.
deepen, yeah. And then you're gonna take that spoil and put it on top of that ridge that's been
Right.
built.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
I have a question. Is there a deadline for us? Or does
on-
we have to come up with this 2.3 million?
There is no deadline. It's, the plans will go, and when the construction funding comes around, then they will be brought out. Kind of like the Spanish Pass project we're doing now. That was engineered and designed probably 7, 8 years ago. It went to the shelf, and then funding became available, and the phases are done. It sat for the last, I think, 4 years now. It's been since we did that one phase. The funding's coming available now, so we'll start a second phase. But the engineering and the design's done. You just have to wait for the budget to catch on their next dredging cycle to catch the funds.
I was just going to add to that, the next opportunity to receive federal funding will be in November of 2020. That's when the FY21 work plan should come out.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I see A.J. Walker with Venture Global is in the audience. A.J. and his firm, as I said last meeting, they have recently signed a huge offtake with the French utility, and we all are looking forward to Venture Global breaking ground here in Plaquemines Parish. Subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Are there any questions from the panel here? How about the audience? Is there any questions from the folks in the crowd? Okay, all right. Oh, yeah. Councilmember Philip France?
Yes, Mr. Sanders, are we utilizing that radio tower that we purchased last year?
I don't think we are. Donald?
We have grant funding that's going to be becoming available, and we're going to put it to use at that time. So currently, it's not being used. We have IT grant services funding that we're getting, and we plan to put it in service.
Could we take care of that property around that tower? The grass is about 3 foot high.
I fully understand. We're limiting our cutting of it from a cost standpoint. We've cut it twice since we purchased it, and it'll be due to cut very shortly. Once the clover stops growing, we'll do a cutting, and then we'll do another cutting probably in August or September. So we're trying to do 2 or 3 cuttings a year to keep it maintained.
Commissioner Black?
We'll take care of it, Mr. LaFrance.
Yeah, Director Sanders mentioned AJ, and I just have a question. I'm not sure if the port wants to answer it, or if a Venture Global representative. Have you guys reached a final investment decision on the project?
No. Come up to the mat, come up to the podium.
So the port says no, they have not?
Looking at AJ back there, the answer is no, that Venture Global has not reached a final investment decision.
Is there a timeline on FID? I've been asked that question a couple of times, and I'm just trying to get clarity on whether or not FID has been authorized.
I would defer to Mr. Walker if he's able to make that response at this moment.
AJ Walker, 7854 West Pelican Lakes Avenue, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On behalf of Venture Global, we are excited that we just signed we're full speed ahead. We just signed a offtake agreement, as Mr. Sanders said. We have not reached FID yet. FID is expected later on this year. I don't want to give a definitive time frame, but it is expected in 2020 sometime.
All right. Well, I'll add, since you have not, is there anything that at least me or the port as a commission can do to help y'all achieve FID? Obviously, please reach out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Any other questions from the board? Questions from the audience? Moving on the agenda.
3A, financial report budget to actual.
Nothing to report at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Number 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
Are there any introductions?
Yeah, I have one.
Q, if you have one? Oh, sure. Black, go ahead.
An ordinance of the Plaquemines Parish Council acting as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to authorize and direct the purchase of the Popage Building from the Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all.
Anyone else? Sounds like it. One moment.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you may have one yourself.
We'll cycle back to that.
Okay.
Number
Is that on the
6,
agenda?
ordinances and resolutions on second reading and final passage.
Thank you very much.
6B, an ordinance to amend and as amended readopt Rule 1 in Chapter 1 of Section 2-18 of the Code of Ordinances for Plaquemines Parish relative to the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to rescind, annul, and set aside ordinance number 19-150, 19-37, and 16-46, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Offer with changes.
I'll second.
On line 16, on the fourth Thursday of the month, lines 31, 5 p.m. or immediately before the regularly scheduled council meeting, or whichever comes first on the second Thursday of each month. Lines 33, 34, 35, on the fourth Thursday of each month, the meeting will be held at 1 p.m. or immediately before the meetings of the Plaquemines Parish Council. And line 49, 50, the implementation of the above stated times will begin with the first regularly scheduled meeting and after the effective date of this ordinance. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this. There's a lot of opinions. I know after our last meeting at the courthouse, had we not deferred a lot of items, had we allowed more of the residents to speak on some things, we would have been there well past our ferry curfew, and all the West Bank council members would have had to drive all the way around. So especially with that, I would ask that we at least look at this. I would prefer all meetings at 1 o'clock, but I know I don't have the votes. I think I have the votes for this, but I open the floor for discussion.
Councilmember Bartholomew.
First off, I don't know of any meeting that we held at that lasted 10:30 that we didn't be able to catch the ferry in Point LaHash. There was no meeting that went to that point, so that's not even in the picture. But I cannot vote for this because it's not fair. Because the people work on that side just like they work on this side of the river. It's always isolating the East Bank people, and I'm not in favor of that. If we're going to do it global, and that way we can't have discriminatory from one from the other side. Let's be fair about it and do it all. But I just can't vote for that because of that. Thank you.
Commissioner Newberry.
Yeah, I support this because when we have council meetings on the other side of the river, obviously Mr. Bartholomew isn't catching the ferry. It was very close to missing the ferry. We caught the last ferry last go around. So I don't know if any other board member has any other opinions. If you're not happy with one, maybe we can come up with agreement at a little bit later, but I'll support the 1 o'clock on Point LaHash.
Councilmember Kognovich.
Well, one, we could tell the ferry when to run. If we there after 10:30, 11 o'clock, they're going to have to wait for us.
And you're paying overtime.
Is that fair to that employee who thinks he's getting off at 9? I mean, we're about to change it till 9 o'clock.
Once a month? I'm glad, I think he'd be willing to make some overtime.
Councilmember Bartholomew.
Yes. Mr. Newberry, I'm quite aware of everything goes on the East Bank, and I'm aware about the time, just as much. Whether they didn't have the Belle Chase ferry running, I came at this meeting to spend my time. And when I didn't stay, I couldn't catch it, I left early, but took care of all the important issues. So I'm quite aware of that. Now, if you want to move and do it all, do that.
Can you go both for one? Mr. B?
Yeah, I don't have a problem. But I'm not voting it like this.
Trudy, will you withdraw your second, please?
No, I'm not.
Nope.
I'm negotiating with it.
You don't have to negotiate with me at all. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Mr. Good. You don't need to negotiate with, nobody needs to negotiate with me. I'm just saying my piece. That's all to that. Just like everybody else at this board, on this board can say their piece. And I don't negotiate with you. You want to do something? Vote. Vote. If you're against, you're against. You're for, you're for. That's the bottom line. About the question about negotiating.
Commissioner Harbert, you still?
Yes. Just re-offer it with the changes. Amendment with these changes?
Back to one. Vote on, let it fail.
I'd like to offer an amendment with the following changes. Lines 30, 31, 1 p.m. or immediately before the regularly scheduled council meeting, or whichever comes first on the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. Lines 48, 49, the implementation of the above stated times will begin with the first regularly scheduled meeting and after the effective date of this ordinance.
Second the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to that amendment.
Certainly.
The amendment to the amendment is on,
Point of order, please. Not to, Mr. We already have seconded motion, been offered and second.
I have a motion for an amendment.
At dispose of the First Amendment first.
We have to approve it, then you come back and
All right.
offer it.
I'll draw the amendment.
Please.
That's been seconded.
It's in second, so you would have to vote on a motion for a different amendment. Or you could let that amendment pass, then you can make it.
After it passed.
Oh, while they're hashing this out,
Yeah, so basically, I'm making a substitute motion.
Can't do that, right?
Yes, I can. Procedurally, yes.
I'm talking about don't let it pass, when being voted on.
The substitute motion is to read
Oh, okay.
on line 33, 34, and 35. On the fourth Thursday of each month, the meeting will be held at 1 p.m. or immediately before the meetings of the Plaquemines Parish Council. That's all. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Substitute motion is, it's not the same. It's the substitute motion is changing lines 33, 34, and 35 to now read, on the fourth Thursday of each month, the meeting will be held at 1 p.m. or immediately before the meetings of Plaquemines Parish Council. That's the substitute motion. The amendment that Mr. Albro offered and was seconded is to read, it reads 5 p.m.
No. 1 p.m.
All right, so your amendment is, okay, well, I'm sorry. Line 31, the substitute motion is line 3132, to read 5 p.m. or immediately before the regularly scheduled council meeting, or whichever comes first on the second Thursday of each month. My apologies. That's the substitute motion.
Yeah.
The substitute motion is exactly what is written here. Yes.
Which is exactly what we have now.
No, it's not. No, the substitute motion that I just offered is what you have in your hand,
The first one.
is the first one. Yes. That's the substitute motion.
So that's what, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of doing it, not talking to the microphone. So that's how the original substitute.
That's right.
Correct. Okay. Everybody got that? Everybody good? All on the same page? Thank you.
Councilmember LaFrance, you had a question?
Yes, I had supported the 5 o'clock meeting, and however, I do believe that it's a little early to change it, so I'm going to vote to keep it at 5 o'clock, and then maybe we can revisit it at 6 months, at the 6-month period. But right now, I think it's a little early to change it. Thank you.
I didn't have a second on that, but with that said, Mr. LaFrance, I have no problem keeping both of them at 5 o'clock as well. So I'll go ahead and withdraw my substitute motion. And hopefully we can remain at 5 and 5. Now, I think what's on the table right now is Mr. Arborough's amendment to his original ordinance, which is 1 and 1.
Five and one.
Oh, 1 and 1.
And if I can have the mic, if I can have the table?
Please, by all means.
Yeah, since it's now back to 1 PM and 1 PM, I'll be opposing that legislation, because I also agree with Mr. LaFrance that we could, if it's going to change across the board, might as well wait then, so.
Get the gun.
Wow, how about all this back and forth? All right, I'd like to call a question.
There's no debate to call a question on.
Got it? I'd like to call a question on the amendment. Machine's open?
Well, Mr. Richard, please
Yeah.
please explain what we voting on.
Right.
Certainly.
Put it back to 1 o'clock.
It appears we're voting to move everything back to 1 p.m.
Okay.
Machine's open. Council.
My machine is down, my computer, okay.
That's dumb.
All right. So what we voted on?
Just the amendment we voted on. So now we got to vote on the amendment.
Voting on the amendment? Oh, y'all got me confused.
All right, I'd like to call a question.
Point of order.
Sure.
Could we have the secretary read what we're voting on in clarification of what just passed, so there'll be no question as to what we're really voting on? Because there seems to be some confusion here, and I'm confused.
The amendment passed to move both meetings back to 1 PM. So now you will be voting on the original ordinance that's sitting in front of you that was handed out by Mr. Arborough as amended to 1 o'clock for both meetings.
And if it fails, then we're back to 5 o'clock for everything.
Correct.
And passes, it's 1 o'clock for everything.
Correct.
Sure. Before we vote, I'd just like to say that I think democracy needs to be as easy as possible, and there's been more people in this room since we're having these meetings at 5 p.m. It's not always an easy lift for the staff, but it's the right thing to do.
While we're talking about that, how many in here do not have anything on the agenda? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good.
Sorry. We do need a second back because it was removed for the amendment. So we need a second for the ordinance as amended.
Offer. Offer as amended. Second for the vote.
Offered by Bartholomew, seconded by Arborough.
I was the second for Mr. Arborough. Okay, then.
Seconded by Councilmember Bartholomew.
Yes.
All right. Do we need to vote again or no?
Yeah.
All right, machine's open.
You want to open it to the public for?
Oh, sure, yeah. Please, if anybody from the public has a comment, please come to the mic, state your name and address.
Yeah, my name's Rob Forshey, 116 New Street. I had a comment before y'all voted the last one, although nobody on this, I don't believe half of the council knew what y'all were voting on when y'all voted on the last vote, okay? So bottom line is, there's more people been in this room since this thing has turned 5 o'clock than any other time that I've been in this meeting, okay? And for y'all to be voting for this to go back to 1 o'clock, I think is a total mistake. And hopefully you'll hear the flack from that. Bottom line is, I think the public should at least be given 6 months, as Mr. LaFrance said, Councilman LaFrance, for at least a chance for this thing to work, huh? So I'd appreciate a no vote. I think it would be what we need to vote on this next vote, if I'm correct here. I think somebody maybe needs to clarify that as well, right?
Yeah. Mr. Moore?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the machine, you can't buzz in. It went too fast. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, with 3 months in, I've been on this council for 6 years plus now, and it's a lot of people. I mean, I know we're counting numbers, but we can count that all the time. And I think what it also does, it gives the opportunity for the government not to have unnecessary staff at meetings. As you can see, a lot of people that typically come from the government side aren't here. And it's the same thing, we're taking them from their jobs during the day. So, you know, at least give it 6 months.
I understand where you're coming from, but I can say through experience in these few meetings, we're not doing justice to the public when we're rushing through and deferring things or not even discussing things because we have certain council members who need to leave or want to get out of here. So there needs to maybe be some compromise here. You know, again, last meeting 2 weeks ago, had we not deferred half of those things, it would have been a very late meeting.
Well, Councilman Albrough, I'll respond to that by saying that just like this last vote that went on, there was no coordination. I don't guess any of y'all talked to each other prior to this meeting, because a lot of those things that were being brought up should have been settled, and it should have been an easy, quick vote. So if you don't have your together, then, yeah, these things can draw out. But if you do have them together, it can be very quick, very precise, and the vote can happen. Now, the other thing that I think should be happening is a lot of these ordinances and resolutions should be a little more descriptive, or some handouts should be done to give the public some more information when they're sitting down in here looking at all of these ordinance numbers and sections and so on and so forth, that it's affecting. Some of these things are not known. Now, this is something that I would like to see. I don't know about the other people in the audience, but y'all have access to it. Just like the report that was brought up a few minutes ago, y'all all had access to it, but the Corps didn't bring enough for everybody sitting in here. I think that should have happened, but it didn't, or a presentation. So with all that being said, I'm going to let y'all go ahead and discuss this one and vote. Hopefully y'all vote the right way.
Point well taken, Rob. Kim, is there a way to get some of these ordinances, the full description online for folks?
Not when we change them at the last minute and handing them out. I mean, how many times do we get something, we just get it 5 minutes?
Certainly. That definitely speaks to Rob's other point, that there probably needs to be some better communication behind the table.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, all agenda items for the port are on the port website, so everyone has access to the agenda, to minutes that happens at port meetings on our site. So I just want to open that to the public.
Maybe we should put a little sign out.
That's what I was going to tell you. We don't do it at this point, but we can put them in their entirety on the parish website.
We'll talk about
Okay.
this week.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim.
But I just want to let y'all know too, though, that You can join the distribution list of all the agendas just by calling the council secretary's office or emailing the council secretary's office, and we'll be happy to add anybody's email that would like to be added. Yeah. And you'll get the full introductions and all agendas and notices.
Last time, Rob.
Oh, this is just a thank you. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thanks. Commissioner Russo.
Yes, some council members have made comments to me that the reason they were somewhat concerned about going back to the 1 o'clock is because they want to make sure that the administration and the parish president's going to be sitting through the full meeting. So if we can get a commitment from that on the 5 o'clock for the next 3 months, I think that will solve some of the issues that some of the members have about being present at the council meeting. And I know, you know, we've seen a disappearance prior to the change of the meeting, if you follow what I'm saying.
President Lapine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Russo.
Good afternoon.
There are some prior commitments that I have in the evening. I will try to attempt to make every meeting that I can. 1 o'clock is a little bit more conducive in my schedule, but again, I will try to make every attempt to continue to facilitate that request.
Well, I could care less if you come or not, but it's other members that have made the comments to me, you know, and that's why I think it was back and forth to whether or not.
But no one has conveyed any of that reservations to
I'm conveying it to
me.
you right now, asking you to please be in attendance. How's that?
I'm sorry?
I'm conveying it to you now, asking you to please be in attendance for the meetings if we keep them at 5.
I will do my best.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to move on this?
Could you please explain what we voting on again?
Certainly.
Yes,
Going back
sir.
to 1 p.m.
We are voting on the substitute that was handed out as amended to move both meetings back to 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
However, in this body, we're only doing the port.
Correct. I meant both meetings of each of the month, back to 1 o'clock. Both port meetings.
That's the port and the parish meeting.
No, right now, it's just the port meeting.
Okay. Got it.
We'll call DJs and
I call a question.
there we go. Let's go. The vote fails.
Back at 5.
All right. Oh, everybody out, every time they leave early.
All right, Bob. Right on, bro.
We're going to move the council meeting.
6C, a resolution establishing a calendar policy for the administrative staff of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I'd like to defer this at this time.
6C?
Yeah.
6D, a resolution authorizing and directing Maynard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to execute an employment contract for services by Paul Matthews as Deputy Port Director between the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and Paul Matthews, effective April 30th, 2020, for a term of 3 years and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
The offer for discussion only. Commissioner Gui.
Go ahead.
Say that again?
Gotta
Oh.
get a second.
Have a second for discussion only
Second.
by Kognovich. Commissioner Gui.
Go ahead. Discussion on it. Go ahead.
Sure. No, well, you queued in first, please. I'm offering as read here.
I thought you were voting. Vote on it.
Not today.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm done.
Anybody else from the panel?
Yeah, I'll discuss.
Good. Commissioner Black.
Can I just ask why we offered it for discussion only and we're not moving on a contract?
So we could discuss if there's anything that that needs to be talked about here in this public meeting.
How long has this been on the agenda?
This is, last time this was on the agenda, Mr. Matthews did not come to the meeting.
It wasn't on there previously as well? Isn't this the third time?
No.
I don't recall.
All right, well, okay, so it's been at least 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So his contract expires on the 30th, right, of April?
It's true.
All right, so if we defer this, and then we vote on it at the end of March, and it fails, are we telling Mr. Matthews, sorry, but you have 30 days to go find another job? I mean, why? I don't know why we keep deferring this thing. I just want to put that man's mind at ease that he's either got a job or he doesn't. I think we've had enough discussions, you know, and that's just my opinion. I think at some point we need to just pull the Band-Aid off.
Certainly, we're having this for discussion to give Mr. Matthews a chance to.
He don't even know what his contract is.
This came from the board. I'm sure he knows exactly what.
Well, no, he knows what the existing contract is. He doesn't know what the 4 amendments that are floating around out there are.
Are those 4 members including yourself?
Absolutely not. I've made a promise to other council members that I have no amendments. So no, Mr. Blank. Challenge accepted. I do not have one. Do you have one?
Matter of fact, I do.
Well, why don't you share that with the rest of the council and the public, as opposed to calling me out as if I have an amendment? I don't have an amendment. I'm dealing with a man's life, his job. Well, I think he's did a pretty decent job. So all I'm saying is that we need to give him the respect that you would want for yourself or anybody else in your family when you're staring down a gun for your livelihood. So I don't have an amendment. You can look through my folders. I don't have one. Kim, did you print me out one? No. Steph, did you print out me one? No, I don't have one. But you just admitted you do. So how about let's share that one. Let's discuss the one that's on the table. Let's discuss yours and whatever one's floating out there and come to a decision. I'll rest.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate the commentary. Is there anybody else that has anything to offer? Mr. Matthews, is there anything you'd like to say about your contract, your employment here?
I think first things first is I've really enjoyed the last 3 years working here. It's been a passion. It's been fun working with the staff. I'll tell you anywhere that pound for pound, this is the best staff in the state for any port. Between its diversity, from different backgrounds, racially, from gender, from experience, career-wise, it's been a great ride, and we have so much work to get done. We've done a lot already, and we're moving forward, whether it's on the VG project, PLT, and other parts of our master plan and other projects coming up. The 3-year contract that has been put before this board is a standard 3-year contract that is no different than anything that Mr. Sanders has had since he's been here, or Mr. Pennison. And so I would ask that it be a 3-year contract as it is standard. However, if the board has a different interest, I would definitely seriously consider that. I would just ask what would be the difference and why. But I want to be here. I came here from the Port of New Orleans and frankly left what I had and what I was doing to do something that I think is far bigger than anything I could ever do at any other port. And so I ask this board respectfully that we move forward with the contract as it is standard, so that we can continue to do the great work that we're doing here at Plaquemines Port.
Any questions from the panel?
Mr. Chairman,
Certainly, Sandy.
I'd like to add to that. Ever since Mr. Matthews has come, he has immersed himself into the port with their policies, with everything we're doing, totally with the community, with the staff. I feel very comfortable with him when I'm out trying to fulfill the vision of the port, that he's here holding the fort down. And he does a great job, keeps me informed, keeps the staff informed, keeps the community informed. He has made himself available to community activities on the POBI board. and he's been a true asset to this port. And I would enjoin the board to vote for his contract as is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arbor.
I just, as a fellow commissioner, I ask that you rethink your decision and take the advice from
To defer the contract for 2 more weeks, to give it some serious thought?
Let's move on the contract today. Put this baby to bed.
Commissioner Newberry?
Yeah, as vice chair, I was excited to work with Mr. Matthews. We have a good working relationship. I feel that Mr. Matthews brings he's a lot of asset to the parish. Mr. Sanders is a general. I mean, he respects Mr. Matthews here, and I don't think he'd put someone in the front line if he didn't feel like it was safe not to do that. So I just wish that the board would put their differences on the side, learn to develop a relationship with Mr. Matthews, and let's move forward and bring this port together as a whole and stop trying to fight whatever we're fighting. So I do hope we able to vote on Mr. Matthews' contract today also.
All right. Commissioner Gui.
The contract has been before us for several weeks, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on amendments to the contract. One of the things that strikes me in regards to some of the discussions is that Mr. Matthews was given a 3-year contract to perform his duties. Unless someone can tell me that he has not performed his duties, why would there be any amendments to the contract, which is similar to the one he already has? So when the arguments are voiced as to why to amend the contract, I hope that the argument to amend the contract includes a problem with the way the job duties have been performed according to the contract. I have yet to see or have anyone explain to me why his contract would be reduced or amendments would be made for any type of dereliction of duty, because there is none. And if we would put ourselves in Mr. Matthews' shoes, how would we want to be treated for doing our job? And lastly, I would hate for the image of the port to be, you come work for us, you do your job, and we'll penalize you. We don't want that out there. We don't want that message out there, unless there's a reason, and I still have not heard a reason. Thank you, sir.
Is there anybody else? Audience? Rob?
Well, I can't keep my mouth shut, huh? All right, so I'm going to bring this up, and I think this come up in the last meeting, the last port meeting. It was in reference to some acknowledgement schedules, so on and so forth. And I also think that there was a time whenever Mr. Matthews went in front of the board in Baton Rouge about the toll bridge in support of the toll bridge, okay? And as someone brought up a second ago, Pa B also went to the board in Baton Rouge in support of the toll bridge. And Mr. Sanders, you mentioned that he did what the public or what the people wanted him to do. Well, I disagree with that 100%, because I don't believe that the population of Plaquemines Parish wanted anything to do with a toll bridge. And how somebody can go in front of the state in support of that, as well as, I'm not even real, I know that the majority of this council and the sole governing authority of the port did not support that. So why that would go in front of the state, I have no clue. But with that being said, that would just be one thing to consider. I don't know his contract. I don't know the money. I don't know what he's done good, and I'm sure there's plenty. But that's the big pie in the sky that I see, and I think that there's a lot of people see that has not been done correctly by the port. And I'll leave it at that, unless somebody's got a question for me before I walk away from here and wind up getting stated that I've come up here 4 or 5 times under one.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Okay.
I do not believe that I said that he was supporting what the people wanted. I said he was supporting a very important infrastructure project. And all 9 of those fellows up there have all been in my office more than once, even when we were back at the old warehouse. And on my board, I have had goals of what we need to do to build the perfect port. And fixing Highway 23 and the bridge and the tunnel has been up there, and that's what he was supporting. He's supporting an infrastructure project that is needed to support the port.
Okay. Well, I've been project manager for plenty of years, 30, 40 years, okay? I've had plenty of whiteboards hanging on the wall, okay? I've had plenty of targets, things that are hot items, things that need to be done. But I'm very clear on my whiteboard as to what. So I may have said on my whiteboard that there is some very critical infrastructure that needs to be done in the Plaquemines Parish. And a toll bridge on Highway 23 is not one of them. The thing that would be beneficial infrastructure-wise is for the port, and every council member and every organization in the parish of Plaquemines should be pushing for something that's been on the books, talked about, ground up, spit out, however many times you want to talk about it, and that is the Peters Road extension and the Walker's Road extension. And I think that had you gone to the state and made that statement, I think that you'd have had the backing from every person in this parish, and I'm not sure, but I'd be willing to bet you that the majority of this council and governing authority of the port would have backed that. But not, and look, we could build the Peters Road extension and leave the Bell Chase Bridge and tunnel in place until such time that funding became available. But right now, we've got an outlet through Algiers that's a 2-lane road. We've got the Bell Chase Bridge and tunnel, and we need another outlet. Port of order, court of order, whatever, call to order.
To hear what the gentleman had to say. But
Yep.
Anyway.
All right. So
2 more minutes.
I'll cut it short right there. I'll let it go. The bottom line is that we should be talking about what is in this parish, wanted by this parish. Thank you.
Sir, thank you, Rob. We appreciate your insights. All right. Moving on. All right, Dr. Goy.
Mr. Matthews, have you ever gone to the state of Louisiana and said you supported tolls?
Now you can get me involved, huh?
Okay, that's fine.
No, sir.
You didn't say it. What did
No,
you
sir.
say?
I said that.
I didn't see it.
Okay, so the video you're talking about is from roughly 10 months ago, May of 2019, in which I went up to the Joint Transportation Committee and stated that the port supports enhanced infrastructure within Plaquemines Parish, because we recognize that enhanced infrastructure in Plaquemines Parish, which could include new bridges, more rail, et cetera, would benefit Plaquemines Port, i.e. benefiting the parish and the region. And that is no different than we have always stated as a port that we need enhanced infrastructure within the parish. But at no point did I even mention or say anything one way or the other regarding the toll, because that is not our swim lane as port staff. We are concerned in every way about infrastructure, whether that's Belle Chase Bridge, the rail wraparound, Peters Road bypass. You can lump those all within the same one. So in general, we were discussing enhanced infrastructure.
And you had discussions with the State Department of Transportation regarding Peters Road, I'm sure,
Correct.
and the rail and all of that.
Correct.
Because that's not what I missed the last meeting.
Okay.
And what got back to me was it was stated that you supported the tolls. And I didn't ask you before this because it didn't even come to mind, but this discussion kind of refreshed me a bit.
We as a staff, we have no position on tolls whatsoever.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Rousseau.
Yes, I brought the subject up, and I'd ask the secretary to play a short clip of that meeting. And I want to be very clear. The testimony that you're about to see is not about just an infrastructure project. It's about a toll infrastructure project. And because we're talking about a contract and splitting hairs here, watch this video, and if you find anywhere in there that there's statements about someone not supporting a toll, please let me know. So would you play the little clip for Mr. Gouy, since he wasn't here last time? I'd like you to see this, Doc, and you can make your own opinion. Can you hear it?
No.
You got it, Ken?
The volume's up on here, but I can't hear it.
Is the video only on hers?
I don't know why it's not.
Senator Carter has as well. Mr. Secretary, you may want to give a brief overview of what took place last night, certainly in Belle.
Now, this is the next morning, the next day after the public meeting in Belle Chase Auditorium.
We have about 16 minutes before you all convene or the Senate President calls you. We had a public meeting that Senator Carter and Representative Leopold asked us to do, and the leadership of the House and the Senate Transportation Committees were there. And it was an opportunity to do what we promised the community that we would do, which was come back to them with the details of what the proposal looks like. The most pressing question is, what is the rate? What is the bridge going to look like? Some of those things that we provided, all of those details. We have handouts of the entire presentation being passed out, and a part of that presentation will also provide the recommendation or the rating that we provided as a department. In full transparency, we had one proposal out of the three that we worked with for about 9 months. They made the decision to not submit if they chose not to submit. It is not uncommon for us to let projects where there's one proposal, whether it's construction or engineering, but we still measure that project with the same rigor and review that we would had we had 10 projects. And so it wasn't necessary to compete against another project to get a rating. The overall technical proposal for this project received what's considered an A. That is not on the same scale. You have excellent at the top, good, acceptable, and unacceptable. You have the opportunity for an A plus or an A minus or those things. It is not uncommon in the P3 world to get exceptional or excellent, because that's a much steeper hill to overcome even in P3. So I don't want you to be deceived by not getting that. It doesn't mean it's not a good proposal or a good project. It's just the way we rated it. And then the next slide that you see is how we compared the model of having the lowest possible toll for the shortest amount of time. We looked at the technical score and the financial score. The technical proposal received an A+. The financial proposal received an A. And so the purpose of last night's meeting was to hear the public's comments about the proposal and what it's proposing to do, and to give us feedback and information to go back and have conversations with the proposer. Folks asked, for example, what about folks who drive 5 times? Well, we're going to have a strategic conversation with the developer, what happens if someone drives 5 times? Is there a way for us to let them go free after their second term for the full 24 hours? Those are conversations that we're going to have and understand whether or not that can work or not. And because it's a partnership, we can't dictate those things because those things cost. But we'll have a very healthy conversation with them. And the purpose of last night's meeting, it was over 250 people. It lasted about 3.5 hours. And we had about an hour and 15 minutes of thoughtful, substantive presentations that you see before you. And folks were very attentive, and someone commented that only 3 people went to the restroom in that whole time. So that's a good thing. And so they were very engaged. And so today's purpose was to give you all the opportunity to give us some comments and feedback that you think ought to be put in there. And we do have with us Mr. Dale Bonner, who is the president of the company, Plenary North America, and they're prepared to give a very abbreviated version of their presentation, and I've asked them after the representative speaks to provide a slide or 1 or 2 slides to talk about who are the team members, because they're folks who've built major bridges here, i.e. Hewitt P. Long, Wrigley's, I believe the Causeway, or the Mississippi River Bridge. So these are folks who have world-class talent doing this. And then I also asked them to highlight the toll rate, because that is the other real important question that we have. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield to you and the representative and senator to comment.
Okay, I do have one card, Paul Matthews with the Plaquemines Port, and you would like to speak? Okay, why don't you come on up?
Yes, for the record, Paul Matthews, Deputy Port Director, Plaquemines Port. We just want to say on behalf of the port, we support enhanced infrastructure in Plaquemines Parish. As you may or may not know, there's more than $20 billion of announced private investment at Plaquemines Port for development over the next 10 years, and it's growing. And so we recognize this enhanced infrastructure development Plaquemines would be significant for what we're doing down there at mile marker 50. So we just wanted to say that for the record. There's a lot of investment going on down in Plaquemines Port, and this would be key to make sure that we don't have the congestion that many people are concerned about. So we're fully supportive of an enhancement of infrastructure in Plaquemines. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Just, I will mention to the committee that last night, at the hearing, the public input, I did mention there are many, as you go around, we hear it at our roadshows, there's many naysayers that, don't want to pay a toll. And
That's good, Bob. You can cut it.
Representative White said it earlier, nobody wants to pay a toll.
Now, anybody who watches this and thinks that we weren't talking about a toll bridge project, I'd like to know, what are you looking at? This is a toll bridge. I'm not talking to you yet, Sandy. Let me finish. You got a habit of cutting me off, and I'd appreciate it if you don't do it. The problem is that there's not one individual in there that does not know that this is a toll project. Not one. So to sit there and say that, you didn't support the toll part, I didn't hear that come out of his mouth. I didn't hear anybody say anything about not supporting the toll. I heard that we wanted to get the lowest toll possible from the chairman, the toll rate. All of those things were discussed. So to get up there and say, I fully support this, we fully support this project is an issue. And I wasn't going to go there today. But when you want to bring that up and start splitting hairs about it's not what you see, it's what you want it to be, I can't buy that. That's all I have to say.
I have something to say.
Commissioner Newberry.
I am against the tolls. Everybody knows that. I've supported the resolutions we've sent in opposing the tolls. But this transportation meeting was directly after the meeting at the auditorium. So I am going to defend Mr. Matthews on this because his job was to build a port. And infrastructure is needed to build a port. He had no clue that we were even against these tolls. So why would y'all hold that over his head? Now, if he had been in transportation meetings after that, I'd like to know.
if it's a question to me, I'll tell you the answer is that the problem we have is that we can't have individuals testifying against the will of the governing authority. And if they didn't know where we stood, they should at least ask. And there should be some discussion. And that's the problem we have with not having a calendar, knowing what's going on over there. It's an independent organization that does what they want, and we find out about it afterwards. And I don't want to belabor this, but you know, it is what it is.
I've been in queue for...
Go ahead, Commissioner Arborough.
Mr. Sanders, were you aware that he was going to be in Baton Rouge that day? Mr. Matthews was going to Baton Rouge that day?
Yes, it was.
Have y'all had previous discussions on the port's position and your position on
infrastructure, yes.
Infrastructure?
And we got a call saying no one's here.
And aren't we right now in discussion on your employee's contract?
Yes, sir.
How off point of order are we? I mean, this is, you knew it, you was his supervisor, he went under your leadership, so we're penalizing him for it? I mean...
And it deals with the transportation, and our state rep was there.
Again, how do we penalize this man for doing what his director, his supervisor,
I think there's any
knew he was going to do?
realization at this point. I think we're trying to discuss the contractual matter and then think about it for 2 weeks and then move on it. Mr. Matthews wasn't here at the last meeting, and we figured we should give him this opportunity. The thing is, there's a lot on my mind. I've been serving as the chairman for about 3 months here. Only this Monday did I get a really thorough, in-depth briefing. After begging and asking, driving to town, meetings getting dropped at the last second, that kind of thing. It's an agency that it's hard to get information out of. It seems like a fight when we want to know simple things. And the thing is, there's a lot of lobbying power with the port. There's a lot of funding. There's a lot of stroke. And at the end of the day, that needs to be working for the best interests of the people of Plaquemines Parish. That's it. We'll defer it.
Mr. Blake, I respectfully ask you to reconsider the discussion as opposed to closing the discussion.
The board has a right to discuss.
What the board has a right to is the same thing Mr. Blank is offering in 6C, which is to look at their calendars. However, in 6D, we have a man's contract that is not transparent. So we talk about transparency, and that's a word you love to use. However, you're sitting over there with an amendment in your folder. You just said it before that you had an amendment. No? I must have misheard, but I think he said he had an amendment.
All right.
Okay. So I would ask.
Well, man, you came to me behind the scenes. You're real smooth talking, man. We got it all worked out, man. This is how it's going to be. And out here, the camera's on. You turn the lights on, man, and you're pretty rough with it.
I'm
learning quick though, man.
Because what happened, I had an actual meeting like grown-ups with myself, Mr. Kognovich, Mr. Roussel, and Ms. Newberry, the vice chairwoman, a week ago to discuss Mr. Matthews' contract.
How'd that go?
It actually went very well. Very well. We actually discussed having a one-year contract with no stipulations, because Mr. Kognovich had mentioned, let's put some stipulations. We went back and forth, had an actual discussion for about an hour and a half to probably about 2 hours on a man's contract. A good discussion. Afterwards, I had a phone conversation earlier this week with Mr. Matthews and said, what do you want? Do you want to still be working for this port? He said, Bill, absolutely. I love it here. I enjoy my job, and I think I'm doing good for the people of this parish. I asked Mr. Sanders, I said, what do you want to do with Mr. Matthews' contract? He said, we'd like to have it go to 3 years. I said, I don't think there's going to be votes for 3 years. I don't think there's going to be, and I said, you know what? What I think we have accomplished in a meeting with the vice chair and 2 other council members who, one of them I historically go at odds with, but we actually had a good conversation and agreement. And I told him, I said, we'd like to see 1 year clean. Before the council meeting, you and I had a conversation. And you even said, I talked to Mr. Bartholomew.
So what you're saying is...
And then, I said, Mr. Blank, I promised Mr. Kardovich and Mr. Russo that I would not come up with an amendment. I would not. And I stuck to that promise. You never told me you had an amendment.
So what you're saying is...
Can I finish?
What you're saying is you're the brainchild behind the amendment, that you brokered the meeting, that you had the meeting that I wasn't in.
Time out. Let me finish?
Go ahead.
I never called the meeting. I was invited to the meeting. Mr. Kardovich had an amendment. I never broke an amendment. When Mr. Kardovich presented his amendment, I said I respectfully disagree. However, let's change a couple things and let's make it a 1-year straight contract. Give the man, if you have a disagreement with him, which some people do, obviously, and I respect that because I have some issues too. However, I can't fire the guy. I said make it 1 year. Give him 1 year under his existing terms to prove himself. To prove himself. So when we had that conversation earlier, Mr. Blank, you had told me, well, I think they got enough people to do 2 years straight contract. So I actually went into a conversation with Mr. Albro. I hope y'all understand how all this works. I had a conversation with Mr. Albro, Ms. Newberry, and Mr. Russo, and even said, because 2 years was on the table being talked about because somebody's got an amendment for that. And I said, you know what? Let's play safe. Let's do 1 year, not have this argument in front of all these people over this man's qualifications and his job. Do 1 year. 1 year, existing contract, and get rid of all the nonsense. I honestly thought after Mr. Russo left, we'd come back and it would be amended. Whoever was going to amend it, I don't have it. Whoever was going to amend it, and it was going to pass non-zero. And we give the man an opportunity to prove himself, which I think he's done already. But now I'm coming up and you telling me you have an amendment, now you say you don't have an amendment. I'll guarantee you everybody in this room said heard you say you had an amendment.
Oh, I think you're really good at this, man. You caused all this chaos and somehow you're blaming me.
What chaos? I have no chaos. If there's chaos, then you know what? How about this chaos?
We're going to defer this. And we're going to give it a little time. He was here to defend himself.
Can you pass out a contract to everybody? Your amendment. Can you pass it out to everybody so we can see it?
I don't have that at this time. I don't have it. Wow. We're deferring this. Moving down the agenda.
7, new business. There are no introductions of resolutions where suspension is being sought. Number 8, approval of the February 27, 2020 meeting minutes.
I have, before we move on, I have one introduction. Sorry, Barbara.
Okay, I withdraw my offer.
I don't have it. Oh. Introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
An ordinance to amend the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District 2020 operating budget of revenue and expenditures for receipt of federal funds from the WERDA Act 2014 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Thank you.
Approval of the February 27, 2020 meeting minutes.
Offer.
Second. Offered by Bartholomew, seconded by Commissioner LaFrance.
Who's absent?
I'm sorry, 8-1 with Arboro not voting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Machine is open.
Machine's open. Right. 8-1 with Arboro not voting. And the meeting is called to adjourn at 6:21 p.m. We'll take 10 minutes recess.